Time for another exciting Peak Performers podcast discussion. And this time, we've got somebody quite special. People write books for a multitude of different reasons, but one of the best reasons people write books today is to further establish their credibility and raise their level of visibility in their field of business. Machate is a best-selling book collaborator, an award-winning editor, and an expert consultant. So, if you've ever considered publishing a book, but you're just not sure how to get the ballpoint pen rolling, listen very closely to the Peak Performers Podcast.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Allie, thank you so much for joining us today. I know the audience is going to get so much out of today's episode. I love the space that you're in. You know, I want you to take me, for example. Here I am, an entrepreneur for the last 17 years. And I finally decided I want to write my first book. And I have it's funny, I didn't grow up saying, I want to be an author. None of that. Help me through the process.
Thor, I'm so glad you asked me that question because it really is a process. And I think one of the biggest challenges that people have when they do decide they want to write a book, whether it's something they've dreamed about for a long time, or maybe more recently as part of their business strategy, it's occurred to them that having a book might be, a useful tool in their toolbox, that they don't realize there is a real process around this. And I don't even just mean the process of sitting down and writing those first words all the way until you write your last words and you have a completed draft. There's so much more that goes into planning, conceptualizing, structuring, of course, writing, but then producing and publishing a successful book, especially when you want that book to be a part of your business strategy. So if you were coming to me and you said just what you just said now, I would ask you first, how you see that book fitting into where you want your business to go.
Interesting question. It's a book around strategy on how to execute from going from point A to point B. And it's really about producing a roadmap. Does that answer the question? Yeah, it does. So that gives me some idea of what you want to talk about in your book. Now, I know a little bit about what you do in your business, but if we were having that conversation and you were my client, I would push you a little further and I would say to you things like, well, okay, that sounds great. So do you teach these strategies to clients currently? Yes, I do.
Awesome. Do you speak publicly? Is that something you're interested in?
I do speak publicly.
Fantastic. So the book then, does it capture something you're already currently doing, or is it trying to help you reach a new audience?
No, it's something I'm currently doing with my clients, and I want to reach a broader audience.
Perfect. So this information starts to feed into how you start putting together a book plan. So for example, you said that you do speaking engagements. You probably want to do more speaking engagements.
Yes.
Many times when people think about publishing a book these days, their minds go straight to ebooks because ebooks seem like all the rage. It's the trendy, hot thing, right, to have an ebook. And absolutely, I do believe that people should have ebooks. But think about this for a second. You're in a room doing a keynote talk and you've got 200 people in the room hanging on your every word, and they're jiving on your energy and they're excited about what you're saying and they're really into what you're teaching. And now you're done and they're like, Thor, we want to buy your book. Do you have a book? And you're like, yes, go on Amazon and search for my title and then download my book, right? That's not going to happen. You have to have a book available on site. You're going to want to have a print book. So right away, we know, because you want to be doing live speaking engagements, that your publishing plan is going to include, probably an ebook, but definitely a print book, because that's one of the goals. So now we know what format you want to do. This also feeds into the content. So I bet if you and I sat down for maybe an hour, even a couple hours, and I started asking you a whole lot of questions about your top strategies for how to execute something, I bet that we could probably put together a really basic short strategy that was maybe a couple thousand words pretty quickly. But a couple thousand words isn't a full-length book. So when you start thinking about what that book is going to include, how robust it's going to be, how broad the topic is going to be, strategies for executing, that's the main topic. But you want to unpack that, right? Like, are we offering completely disparate strategies? Are we offering one main overall program that you're going to walk readers through step by step? What is going to fill without just padding in words or just trying to stretch things thin? A really full-length book. Most people don't realize that to get a good print book, you need at least 25,000 words.
And how many pages does that work out to be in a basic paperback?
It's a good question, and people always ask that. So here's a little insider secret. Readers talk about page count. When you're in the book industry, page count is irrelevant. Word count is the only thing that matters, because the truth is you can take the same amount of words, and depending on the size of the book, we're talking about trim size, so it could be like a short gifty book or a big book. Also the way that you design it, how much white space, how large the font is, it could really be a huge variety in terms of what the page count. Very roughly speaking, just to give you an idea, you're talking about 150-ish pages.
And that's 25,000 words?
Roughly, very,
Okay.
very roughly.
Okay.
But the main reason why I say 25,000 words as a minimum is because when you have a print book, you need enough pages to have a spine. Because if you can't print a book with a spine, you basically have a stapled booklet, right?
Yes.
So that's really what the key thing is. It's enough words to be able to produce, and also something that doesn't look ridiculous. I mean, if you try to pack in too much white space, it's pretty obvious that you're just trying to expand something.
And I'm always trying to figure out how to convey the most amount of information in the shortest period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So it does, from books, if it was a 12,000 word book, where does that kind of fit in? Does that not enable the book to then be picked up by a major publisher? Do they have rules around that?
That's a good question. So I wouldn't say that it's a rule necessarily. It has more to do with the economics of producing a book. At 12,000 words, not only do you not have something long enough to even create a print book with a spine, it's not economically feasible to produce a book like that on a large scale. In most cases, unless you're talking about some kind of gift item or something that's heavily illustrated where there doesn't need to be a lot of text, a 12,000 word book is never going to be a print book, certainly not with a major publisher. For a major publisher, you're generally looking at your average mainstream commercial print book is roughly 40 to 50,000 words, up to 70,000 words for a nonfiction book is the typical range.
Interesting. Now bring me through the process. You've got an entrepreneur. They're not an author. They've never written a book. Where do you start with some questions, but what's the next phase? How do you get them to just start to execute on the book, start to write it?
Yeah, it really depends on the author. So I'm a book collaborator. I work with people in a number of different ways. Sometimes when people come to me, they already know. They are the expert. We'll use you as the example. You are an expert at teaching execution. You are an expert about peak performance and what it takes to be a peak performer. But maybe you already know you can say to me, Allie, I'm not a great writer. I don't really like writing. I don't feel like it's my strength. I could talk all day and sound articulate and smart and give great advice, but it just doesn't make it onto the page.
You nailed it.
Okay. Very common, very common. Why should you necessarily be an expert at writing? That's not what you do. I mean, it's a feature of how you communicate with people, but your primary skills are in teaching people to be peak performers, right?
Correct.
A lot of people don't think that, it's easy to mistakenly think that we can all write, because we can all write. I mean, anyone can pick up a piece of paper and you can write a letter to your friend, and you can write a blog post, and you can write an article. Certainly you are capable of writing. But writing a book is a very different animal. So we ask those questions. I try to figure out, can someone write the book themselves? Do they have the time? Do they have the interest? If they don't, one way that I work with people is I do ghostwriting. What that usually looks like is I spend some time with the author up front, really drilling into the concept of the book. And actually, this is the first step, no matter how we end up proceeding ultimately. But that first step is to get really, really clear about the concept. I'm very big on outlines, and I'm very big on planning. I really believe that if you spend the time to think through the execution, if you will, of your book before you dive into it, that you're going to end up with a better draft, and you're ultimately going to save yourself a lot of time and aggravation in the revision stage. So I like to put that time in. I like to spend time with the author looking at the competition. Who is your target reader, and what other books is that person reading? If you were to publish a book, you have to think of it like entering a conversation that's already in progress, right? Because you're publishing into a space where there are already other books. It's like walking into a cocktail party and everybody's already talking about something. To contribute to that conversation, it's good to have some idea of what's already been said and what's already going on. So we like to look at what the competition is. What are other authors in your space talking about? What kinds of activities are they doing? So that speaks to platform, which is something we haven't touched on yet, but is also a really important part of marketing a book. Who are these other people that your target readers are also going to be reading? How do you stack up against them? Expertise-wise and experience-wise. Why would they maybe choose your book instead of somebody else's book? Or are there things about what you teach that are very complementary to what's already out there, and what might help them see how your book can enhance what they're already learning or doing based on other books that they've bought? So we look at those things, we talk about it, we talk about what kinds of things the author wants to achieve. So you're talking about, speaking, teaching. I would ask you if you were launching any new programs, if it was about, just really boosting your visibility on a national level, like you want to get on TV, you want to get on radio, like where do you want to be seen, what do you want to be doing, what kind of content is going to get you there, and then we start figuring out what structure is going to support you in best conveying that information.
Who's holding you accountable? Many will answer, myself. Well, that only goes so far. You'll do more for others than you'll do for yourself. If you're not getting the results that you want, need, and desire, it comes down to your accountability. If you're ready to stop dabbling and really play full out, head on over to thorconklin.com and under services, check out our real accountability system. This is not for the timid or weak of heart. This is only for those individuals that are truly committed to taking their game to the next level. Let's talk about cost for a moment. If I come to you from a ghost writing standpoint, what am I going to be looking at as far as cost?
It's a great idea. If you are talking to an experienced ghostwriter and you're talking about a full ghostwriting situation, which means the heavy lifting is on my shoulders. I'm drawing the information out of your head through a series of interviews, and I have a system for how I do that. So once we have that concept nailed down and we have the outline nailed down, I walk you through phone interviews that I then use in combination with some light research, and usually my own understanding of a topic, to create drafts. The drafts are then sent to the author for review, and you get to, obviously provide feedback. That might mean you're making comments and revisions to the draft itself, or maybe we're just getting on the phone and we're talking about it and I'm producing a new draft based on that feedback, whatever that is. That process usually takes about 6 to 9 months, and you're looking at a minimum of about $25,000 and up.
Got it. Now, somebody says, look, I want to produce a book. I don't have the resources right now to pay a ghostwriter. What are the other options?
Absolutely. You will find that there are a number of different professionals out there who work with authors to help them get a book from their head onto the page. Some of them call themselves coaches, book Sherpas, consultants. Like I said, I use the word collaborator. I would talk to you about going through a coaching program. That would probably be the next best thing. Again, you would want to have that professional guidance and help in figuring out precisely what book is the best book for you and your business goals right now. I think that that's really key. Sometimes people come into this process with an idea that they just are sort of attached to in their heart. It's something that they want to say, or they really want to write about, or maybe they've just gotten it into their head that this is the best idea for a book. But sometimes that idea does not line up as well as they might think with what they tell me their goals are. So, for example, I had a potential client once who told me that she was trying to launch a coaching business, and she was trying to shift into a different space from what she had been doing previously. And when she told me about the book she was writing, it turned out it was a collection of inspirational stories that was really only very loosely related to what it was she wanted to coach people about. And I said to her, well, who are these people that the stories are? Are these your clients? Are these people that you've helped? And she said, no, they're just, I found people online who had really great stories. And the more we talked, the more I realized she might be putting together a nice book, but the book was not going to establish her as an expert or give her any kind of credibility, because none of the stories in the book had anything to do with anything she herself had done. So when she said that her goal was to use the book as a way to attract new clients for this new coaching business, I had to help her understand that that book was not going to support her in that goal. So you work with somebody in the front part to get that concept, and then a coaching program might look like, for example, I have one I call Write Your Book Now. It's a 6-month program. And once we've worked on that outline together, I then guide the author in writing the book themselves. So they create the draft over the course of 6 months. We have phone calls. They have access to me via email. I encourage them to send me drafts so I can provide feedback and keep them on track. And the goal is to finish the program at the end of 6 months with a completed rough draft. Now, it's probably going to have to go through an editorial process, but at the end of the day, you're going to be spending, less than half of what you would if you had someone write the book for you. But of course, you can see the difference. In that program, the author is the one doing the heavy lifting. They're just getting, they're getting someone to help shine the light and give them the best way forward, and help, still eliminate wasted time and mistakes, and, try to shorten the curve a bit. But ultimately, you are still writing the book yourself. So that's one way. I have a 6-week program for people who have an even shorter budget, or who really just feel pretty good about their ability to execute on the book themselves. They just want to make sure that they're writing the right book, that they're not going to, waste time barking up the wrong tree, so to speak, trying to write something that ultimately isn't going to do what they need it to do. Get really clear. And when I talk about outline, I'm not just talking about your old academic, Roman numerals. I'm talking about what is each chapter, what is in each chapter, what are the subsections, what kind of anecdotes or exercises or examples are you going to provide, what stories are going to be here, how are they going to support the theme of this section, how is this section going to support the theme of the chapter, how is the chapter going to support the part or the section, and how is that ultimately going to support the main promise of the book. If you can get clear on that stuff, and you're a pretty strong writer and you're able to hold yourself accountable to a schedule, even that will give you a really great head start in writing your own book for a lot less money than hiring a ghostwriter.
And what's the price of that?
My 6-week program is $2,500.
Okay. All right. That certainly should be within everybody's budget. Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.
That concludes part 1 of our interview with Ali Machate. Be on the lookout for part 2, where we'll chat about why planning ahead is essential when writing a book, plus choosing the best way to launch your big bad bestseller. All on the Peak Performers Podcast. See you at the top.